Hello and welcome to 8-Bit Crisis. My name's Link.
And I'm Luigi.
And what are we doing today, Luigi?
We're watching episode 2 of The Mighty Micro.
Should we jump straight into it?
Yeah.
Cool. You can hear it okay? Machines and money. Okay.
Throughout the 1970s, the average working day has been about 8 hours. In the earliest societies, a man and his family had to work just about all their waking hours simply to provide enough food to keep alive. Later, through the use of tools and more advanced forms of technology, they freed themselves from this absolute dependence on the environment, gradually increasing their wealth and reducing their need to work. But one doesn't have to go back to the Stone Age to make this point. Just imagine the lifestyle of a coal miner in the middle of the Industrial Revolution about 100 years ago. Working under vile and dangerous conditions for up to 16 hours a day, sometimes with his children scrabbling in the depths alongside him, he was still only able to earn enough to eke out a bare existence for himself and his family. Little wonder that Karl Marx was later to cry, "Workers, arise. You have nothing to lose but your chains."
Starts with a very serious point again.
That happened last time.
Yeah.
Compare with his successor today. Still a tough job and no mistake about it.
You heard of the miners' strikes before?
But working
Yeah.
conditions
So this will be
hours which would
pre-miners'
have
strike.
seemed like a dream to the miner of the 1820s. A warm, comfortable home, children properly fed, educated and clothed, a personal motor car, electronic devices of incredible sophistication in the home, holidays in the sun in remote parts of the world. This isn't to point out how lucky today's miners are, but rather to indicate the stupendous improvement that's taken place in their standard of living. And all of it due to the Industrial Revolution, the coming of the machines, and the vast affluence that they've brought. The mechanical muscles which the Victorians invented and put to such good use triggered off the Industrial Revolution, which in turn led to a huge expansion in the wealth of those societies which were touched by it. This, despite the fact that many people once feared that machines would decrease employment and lower living standards. The problem was that people couldn't see what those workers displaced by the machines would do. Who would employ them? Where would they get their money? Much the same arguments are being applied today to the microprocessor revolution.
The microprocessor is a machine with a difference. It's a tiny, tiny computer, which unlike other machines, amplifies the power of men's brains, whereas previous machines amplified the power of their muscles.
So I think this is just repeating episode 1
Yeah.
so far. It's the same kind of points, isn't it? What do you think about this? What do you think about the impact of computing on jobs?
I'd say it's actually going to now. I understand why they'd think that, but I'd say it's actually increased employment because you need people to look after the machines and you need there's big factories full of workers making them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or I think engineers working on factory lines and IT systems on those lines as well. So you actually have computers running everything, but then you need the people to run the computers. And everything becomes a little bit more sensitive as well. If you've got computers doing precision engineering, then all of the engineering needs to be maintained to a higher standard. So I don't know overall what happens. I guess overall it means fewer jobs. But then what's happened, well, you tell me, do you know what's happened since the 1980s in westernized economies in general? What types of jobs have come about and increased in order to replace the other jobs?
That have come about are, well, what do you call them? Well, I guess nowadays you've got YouTubers, like that wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, okay.
You've got you've got IT departments in big companies and even in small companies. You've got
the thing I was thinking of more was service sector roles. So you've got more people providing services rather than making things or digging things or growing things. There's more people delivering services. So you've got more delivery drivers, for example. And I think it's fair to say that you've probably got more professionals as well serving a generally wealthier population. So that could be anything from solicitors to accountants to advisors.
I agree with that.
But even there's jobs that exist today that just didn't exist before. So window cleaners have always existed, but people who come and clean your plastic recycling bins for you, that wasn't a thing when I was younger. And now there's people who drive around doing that. So I think there's more service roles as a result. Okay. I'm just noticing before we press play that we've got an email saying that there's a new comment on one of our videos.
Comments, so thank you.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice that a few people are interacting with it. Do watch the other videos, go back through the playlist where you'll see that we've taken the full episodes and broken them down into the relevant subjects if you want to check them.
And like them and subscribe to the channel.
Do that, absolutely. Let's go. Not too much repetition, please. Let's do something new.
Yeah.
Unlike the machines that made the Industrial Revolution, they're extremely cheap to mass produce.
I have no idea what that's doing.
They also use up virtually no raw materials, hardly any fuel, and they're totally non-polluting. In fact, they can be used in absolutely enormous numbers, all over the place, and at very little cost.
I don't know what's happening.
I just like the music.
Through space projects like the Voyager, with their vastly increased computer power, we're beginning to map the surface of the planets. And all this signifies far-reaching changes in our technology.
An excellent example of the dramatic pace of change is if we take a common contemporary object like this relatively cheap watch. Costs about $50 all over America.
Which microcomputer manufacturer started out making digital watches?
Are they still around today?
I'm not going to tell you. Come on, think back. Which one started with watches?
Probably Apple, because
No.
it's the Apple smartwatches.
No, they came much later.
Oh,
they entered
God.
the watches much later. We did cover it when we were looking at one of the manufacturers that we covered.
Oh, so it's one of them.
Hmm.
We mentioned Apple.
Who was the crazy inventor who liked to invent some weird things? I think somebody else needs to go back and watch the videos as well that we've already done. Yeah, Clive Sinclair.
Oh.
He started with watches, moved into computers, and then he invented, what was that weird contraption that nobody wanted to buy, do you remember?
Didn't he create like a console?
No. The car, the pedal car.
Oh, yeah. That.
Pedal car.
I thought that was the person who made the C64 that made the car, the pedal car.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Right, okay, we need to do some revision with you so that you move into season 2 with a baseline of knowledge, yeah? Right, let's go.
£25. Now it's got several functions, a bleeper alarm, a stopwatch, a liquid crystal display and all that. This in itself is amazing, but perhaps the most remarkable thing is if we go back to, say, the first Apollo lunar landing in 1969, which one thinks of as very advanced technology and also as fairly recent technology, the astronauts on that flight would simply have failed to understand this watch. They wouldn't have known how to operate it, and they certainly wouldn't have had any idea how it might have worked. I think it's very difficult to think of a better example of the dramatic pace of change.
But on a more basic level, the chip is now appearing in supermarkets. In America, all products are now marked with special stripes, allowing them to be scanned by a laser beam. At the cash desk, the goods are simply passed over a laser scan device connected to a computer. It makes the cashier's job faster and more efficient. It registers the product sold, the price, and updates the store's stock account. And one day, in the not too distant future, the man from the gas or electricity board will arrive at your home, not simply to read your meter, but armed with his portable, pre-programmed mini-computer, will calculate your bill and hand it to you there and then.
Thank you very much.
So, that's forward thinking in 1979, so they're predicting what's going to happen. What's actually happened with our meters? Do you know?
They've just become that your phone will keep track of them, isn't it? And it will go to the company.
Indirectly, your phone will keep track of them. So the smart meter will be read by the company, and then the company will push that information through to your phone.
So it's the other way around.
Smart meters. So then they didn't. Maybe if he'd taken that extra leap, he might have imagined a time when the I suppose that's moving more into telecommunications, isn't it, rather than just microcomputers. But he may have just gone a step further and gone, maybe the meters will just communicate with the company directly in future, and there won't be a need for the gas man, because that was another job that has been pushed out a little bit by technology.
Thank you.
In schools, the power of the chip will begin to help with personal tuition.
Can we see what computer?
Just tear it the way it is. It'll be alright. I don't need any more paper.
Okay. Right.
It's like a
Whilst in
printer in an
hospitals, the
office.
chip at your bedside will help the doctor with instant diagnosis. Industrially.
I think you haven't got time for a tape to load if someone's having a heart attack, have you? For it to tell you they're having a heart attack. We'll just load the tape, wait for the program to load.
Users have now brought the power of the microchip onto the shop floor. Here, a skilled operator literally teaches the robot to do the job, with the microcomputer recording every action. The action replay, now minus the operator, carries on as before, and this kind of application is ideal for hazardous, repetitive, or simply unpleasant work. The enormous power and flexibility of the microprocessor works for the architect and the town planner. They can instantly see the effects of their development on the environment. But its extraordinary versatility for many people poses a threat. In the newspaper world, the Times dispute brought this whole issue to a head. Here at the Nottingham Evening Post, this technology has been in use for some years. The technique is word processing. Instead of the story being typeset in metal by teams of craftsmen,
no idea what that
the
is.
reporter now types the story directly into a computer. Simply by touching the keyboard, she can alter her spelling, grammar, and in fact anything she likes. Once the story is complete, it's automatically stored in the central computer. When he needs the story, the editor, with his own terminal, calls it up, adds his own changes, headlines, and so on. The edited version is then typeset into normal typographic layout and printed in the usual way. The point about this technology is the speed and flexibility which allows for rapid changes to the editions during the day. In fact, this paper prints 9 editions daily, compared with the 2 or 3 published by our national papers. Inevitably, this is going to put people out of work, and the effects are likely to be far-reaching. So the problem facing us now is the creation of completely new industries where the microprocessor functions positively for a working society. In fact, the range of brain-like tasks the microchip can perform is going to increase steadily in the years ahead, like transposing your favorite tune into a musical score.
This is actually really accurate with that, because I have on my phone I can't remember, I think it's called Maestro on my phone, and it does this exact job.
That da 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 da. That sounded a little bit like that tune that you showed me.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of months ago now. Okay.
But what are the facts about the microprocessor? In what way will it actually affect employment in the coming years? Well, the first word that springs to everybody's mind in this context is, of course, robots. The robot has a prominent place in science fiction literature and movies. Basically, it's a man made out of meccano parts, which stumbles around doing man-like things, flashing its eyes and engaged in stilted, tinny conversation. Apart from hints that it has special strength or unusual weapons, it's generally looked upon as a kind of cumbersome, rather inferior version of Homo sapiens. In fact, entertainment apart, it's hard to think why anyone would ever bother to make one. But that's really based on a misunderstanding of the meaning of the word robot. To understand what we mean by it, we need to realize that there are essentially three types of machines. This is the simplest kind. It's all muscle, an extension of its driver's muscles. And it can only work as long as he's here to guide it. Even if you switch it on, it won't do anything sensible without a human in its seat. This is the second type of machine, a programmable one. It adds its own mechanical muscles, but it can also go through a sequence of actions according to one or possibly a large number of predetermined patterns. But although this looks very clever, the machine itself is really very unintelligent. It's a dumb machine, to use computer parlance. This sequence of actions it goes through may be complex, but it will go on doing them, however inappropriate they may be.
Artificial stupidity.
In the enrobing chamber, where the blocks are coated with icing, cooled and decorated.
Here's a good example. Remember this marvelous film about industrial relations, I'm All Right, Jack? Remember where Ian Carmichael visits a factory making chocolate bars?
This is my favourite machine. I say, is there anything wrong, old man? Oh, my hands. Pretty overwhelming, isn't it? Come on, round the other side. And here we have the coated blocks, soft, milky, delicious. All ready for stamping with a walnut and a cherry. Now all that remains is to wrap them, pack them, dispatch them. There we are.
Though this may seem like an example of automation in its silliest form, you'll notice that the machine isn't all that stupid. For example, it gives the bowler hat more than one cherry and arranges them neatly into a pattern.
Seen everything, my boy?
In the movie, it's just a joke, of course. But this would really make it a robot rather than a dumb machine. For the essence of a robot is that it not only performs mechanical tasks more easily or more rapidly than a human, but it also guides itself to some extent, modifying its behavior according to what it senses in the world around it.
Okay.
Okay, investigate it and resolve it for me, okay?
Oh,
Bye-bye.
sure. Okay.
Its robot.
I need to look this up. IBGSM city page. IBGSM city page. But it doesn't even exist.
Oop, isn't it?
No Google result. No. It says, did you mean IBM city page? No, nothing for that either.
Yeah, just nothing.
Right.
Like this, performing tasks which have hitherto been reserved for specially trained and skilled humans, that will kick the computer revolution into being. By increasing productivity and efficiency dramatically, they'll accelerate the trend towards a more affluent, less work-dependent society. The economic consequences of this are enormous. Countries which get in quickly on the robot revolution will reap tremendous rewards. Those who lag back will become steadily less competitive, in just the way that those countries which missed out on the Industrial Revolution remained locked into medieval standards of living.
Some countries are already committed to massive investment in industrial robots, and amongst them is Italy, with the robot-built Fiats using this technology to its utmost.
Can they say Fiat?
Any industrialized country that wants to maintain its living standards in the 1980s, let alone the 1990s, is going to have to look at robots and their possibilities quickly. But now, let's consider one of the most sensational consequences of the microprocessor revolution, the disappearance of money.
This pound note and this dollar bill are useful bits of paper because they allow us to buy the things that we want. But that's all they are, really, just bits of paper. A printed record of the fact that their owner has contributed something to his society.
In primitive societies, people simply exchange one form of goods for another. But barter doesn't really work where people have nothing to exchange but their specialist skills. To meet this need, money came into being. Beginning as chunks of precious metal, money developed into tokens, then coins, and finally paper banknotes.
But a banknote is still only a piece of paper with writing on it. And for thousands of years, of course, that's been the only way of making a permanent record, but it's a very inefficient one. All the paper's got to be bought, then it's got to be printed, then it's got to be distributed and guarded, and in due course, replacements have got to be issued. And it's also extremely vulnerable to theft. In the past few years, the computer has appeared and provided a completely different and far more efficient approach. What this amounts to is that instead of making a mark on a bit of paper saying £1, we make an electronic mark 1,000,000 times smaller in a computer's memory. And we indicate alongside it, also in the form of a minute electronic signal, who owns the sum of money recorded. The record, electronic rather than physical, sits there until someone wants to look at it or wants to arrange for it to be transferred elsewhere. What happens now if one wants to transfer money from one business to another is that computer A changes its own record appropriately, sends a message to computer B, which makes its own amendments. It's as simple as that. No mail, no danger of theft, and the transaction completed at the speed of light and at a fraction of the cost. The earliest experiments in using the new electronic money, for that's what it is, actually began about 20 years ago when those funny symbols appeared on the base of checkbooks. Hardly anyone realized that they were the first steps in the move to a totally cashless society. The next
Quite there yet, are we?
Cashless. Many of you will have one or more of these.
So, just to sort of go off topic a little bit, which is very much what this episode's doing anyway, so I feel quite comfortable doing that. Did you know that banks, commercial banks, make money? They actually create money.
Yeah, doesn't it happen in England? It happens in the Bank of England. They have the mint, isn't it called?
Well, that's making coins. So that's actually the Bank of England issuing more coins, which is one way of getting cash into society. Yeah.
But they also have like little printer things, don't they, that like prints all the notes?
For doing the notes, yeah. I don't remember. I think it's the Bank of England is responsible for the notes, and the government treasury is responsible for minting the coins.
Oh, I thought it was the other one.
I might be wrong, but I don't mean that. You know, if we take a bank in the UK like Barclays,
yeah,
they're allowed to actually make money, fresh money, like it grows on trees. And the way they do it is really, really simple, and most people don't know this is how it happens. Actually, let's start with why it happens. The population's generally growing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And inflation's happening, so the price of everything's going up. Therefore, you need more money in society.
Oh, yeah.
You must need more money because everything's costing more, right?
Yeah.
And no one ever asks, where does that money come from? Now, there is quantitative easing, which the Bank of England can step in and do, and they can literally print money. But that isn't how most of the money is made in the country. You go to a bank, you give them £1,000 to deposit. Your bank.
Oh, is it interest?
No, your bank account says that you have £1,000 in it. Yeah?
Okay.
So you've got £1,000, but the bank then takes that money and lends it to somebody else.
Oh.
So maybe they lend it to you, and you get £1,000 in your bank account. So there's now two bank accounts with £1,000 in it. They've literally created credit within the financial system. They've created money, and it's as simple as that. And that's why they have to hope that everyone doesn't turn up one day and say, can we have our money back? Because the bank will just say, well, no, we haven't got it. We lent it to somebody else, but we created money at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how the supply of money in the country grows generally. Literally banks taking money and saying, we'll put money into that bank account by lending them money.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's certain rules to make sure that doesn't get out of hand, to do with the credit, what's called the credit multiplier. But most people don't know that banks literally create money. And it is that simple. If you look into it, I haven't simplified something that's much more complicated. When the bank takes money from somebody as a deposit, they lend it to somebody else, they create money.
They too are a sort
Have
of
that for free.
printed record of your wealth, but unlike coins and notes, they're not interchangeable.
How would you like to pay, sir? Access card, please.
At the moment, the card really just identifies its owner. He wants to make a purchase, so the assistant writes down the details, and the document is popped through the post in the usual way.
God, buying an Atari.
Hardly worth the effort. Why not use a cheque or good old-fashioned cash? Well, that was just a halfway house. The next step involves just you and a distant computer. You punch in your personal code number. It checks to see if your card is valid and if there's enough money in your account. And if there is, it okays the deal. And in this case, pays out in traveller's checks. The whole transaction is concluded in seconds.
This is so, sorry to pause so much, but it's so frustrating that 45 years ago they were talking about checks not really being necessary in future, and we still have them. The banks, they tried to get rid of them a few years ago, and there was a little bit of an outcry, but I find it incredibly frustrating. We just need to say, checks, done, finished, we don't use them anymore.
Throughout the 1980s, the process already underway will gather pace, and by the 1990s, money as we know it, and as it has existed for thousands of years, may be totally redundant. There will be some surprising consequences, some good, some slightly sinister. Bank raids crop up pretty frequently these days, and crime flourishes because hard cash is easily transferable and difficult to trace. But the shift from cash to electronic money will gradually reduce this kind of thing, because electronic money will pass not from hand to hand, but from computer to computer. However, However, this is leading to some funny trends. In America, police are already beginning to notice a shift of muggers' attention from the wealthy, whose pockets are likely to be lined with treacherous credit cards, to the poor, who paradoxically are more likely to carry cash.
Soon there won't even be any point in the theft of goods or precious items. What are you going to do with them when you've stolen them? They won't be exchangeable for negotiable, anonymous cash. Amazing though it may seem, by the time we get to the 1990s, the crime of theft, as we know it today, may have vanished.
Wrong. Massively wrong.
For some time, coins will probably still circulate to allow small transactions to take place. But even this use will die away as people find the carrying of cash less and less convenient. Already in many cities, public transport and telephones require tokens purchased in advance. But for anyone who doubts the remorseless spread of the credit card, take a look at this New York taxicab. Okay, fine. This'll do nicely. How much is that?
$8.25, sir.
Okay, can you give me American Express?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sign it, please.
Get to sign it. Thank you very much.
No chip and pin.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
He doesn't seem very happy with his new office job, does he?
Should be to make everyone,
Has to do
criminals
paperwork.
accepted, of course, a good deal wealthier, and certainly make life a whole lot more pleasant. And all because of electronic money. But will it be totally beneficial? On the surface, one might think so, but there are one or two smoke signals which one shouldn't ignore.
Credit cards may be very convenient for both the user and the bank, but they also have a funny way of keeping tabs on what you do. Wherever you go, whatever you buy, the card pins you down, pouring information back into its central computer. And soon, cards will not just be a convenience, but an absolute essential. Increasingly, we're moving towards a cashless society.
Vous avez fait faim?
These French stores have been directly linked to a local bank. A specially issued card can be used in neighborhood shops, and your account automatically debited. So, if your bank balance isn't up to par, you could be in trouble. This principle is already being used in a very advanced way at Citibank in New York, where you have a choice of services, all relayed to the computer through a small keyboard and television screen. You insert your magnetic card, tap in your personal code number, and the computer asks you which services you require. In this case, he wants to deposit some money. The computer recognizes the customer and automatically updates his account.
In the computerized world of the 80s, and in particular the 90s, it's going to become extremely difficult to buy anything, to go anywhere, even to do anything, without one's own form of personal identifier. Chances are this will come in the form of a credit card with perhaps a built-in microprocessor which recognizes its owner somehow and makes it virtually useless to anyone else. This personal identifier might even come built into a watch, or possibly even a signet ring.
Signet ring.
All very convenient and useful, of course.
Why don't you think you mentioned
provided
mobile
we don't
phones?
mind the computers knowing where we are and
What he
we're
would have been
doing
used
just
to is
about
like a
any moment.
Nokia flip phone sort
But
of
are we
thing.
sure that we aren't
even
going to
that.
bitterly
Oh.
resent that kind of perpetual computer surveillance, no matter how benevolent it is?
Well, that's the kind of question we're going to have to face up to in the 1980s. And there are obviously political and social questions of equal magnitude as well. Join us in the next program to consider some of them.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So what did they get right and what did they get wrong in terms of predictions?
So things they got wrong with the predictions is we mentioned the mailman thing with not the mailman,
The gas man.
yeah, the gas man, as well as I think they got right with a lot of the stuff about like robots and the robotic revolution sort of thing.
The only thing I ever see robots doing when I think about it is making cars.
Yeah.
That tends to be the thing they show. There's certainly all of the robots around the house, that hasn't really happened.
Yeah, that hasn't happened.
They touched on big data, which was important because that's like a big topic now. It's taken sort of 30 to 40 years to become a really big topic, but now that's something a lot of people worry about and something that gets into all of our lives. Every time we download an app for another company, really they want to collect as much data as possible as a part of that.
Yeah, and one of the things they got wrong was the thing about there being less crime.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the banks and everything, there's still bank heists. Obviously they aren't as profitable, almost, but they're still very profitable, and they've just made a way to make it easier for fraud, like fraudulent.
I think the problem they have is that they, as a society, we haven't done away with systems that don't work, and maybe that's a bit of a paradox, me saying that when we're doing an 8-bit computing channel. But you know, we still have cash and we still have checks, and we don't need them. And some companies around the world are already showing us we don't need them. And you, at some point, you just have to say this is too expensive to maintain because a few people want it. And you just need to make the cut off and say, right, we move on.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone give checks other than my great auntie.
Yeah. So I think that's the bit that this program didn't. It in some ways it was too optimistic about what could happen, and didn't factor in the fact that people tend to stop. They don't stop progress. They stop outdated technology from being replaced fully.
Yeah, they make the progress by bringing in the new stuff, but they don't get rid of the old stuff.
Yeah, and then you've got multiple systems to govern. So the government has to think about cash, about checks, about travellers' checks, about electronic banking, and that means they've got more things to regulate, and things don't necessarily get supervised because it's all spread a little bit thinner. So I'm against keeping hold of old payment methods. I think they should be done away with. But they, as well as being over optimistic about some things, they also didn't think far enough, which is fair enough. You know, 2 generations of technology comes across as magic if you just suddenly introduce people to it. So the idea of mobile phones and what mobile phones can do today, that would have just blown these guys away, and they wouldn't necessarily have believed it. So they're talking about signet rings with chip and pin on it, and you know, you can't look ahead and go, you know, people won't be wearing signet rings. So good episode.
Yeah,
a good episode. This isn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be more about computers and how computers work. Maybe it's a good thing that this is actually forcing us to think about the political, historical side of things a little bit more as well. So hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching.
And happy gaming.
And until next time.
Happy gaming.